Welcome. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. I am Reverend Dr. Kate R. Walker, and I am so delighted to serve as the minister of this wonderful community. It is Sunday, December 12th of 2021, and we are delighted that you have chosen to be with us this morning. Whatever made you choose to click on a YouTube connection, whatever made you decide to search us out, you are welcome here. Wherever reason, wherever you are from, whomever you love, you are welcome here. We are a community dedicated to welcoming the stranger, working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has woven into the fabric of life. And I am live here this morning in our sanctuary, but I have with me an incredible team of people, a collective talented people. Our liturgist today is Stephanie Pulowski. For all ages, we're going to hear a wonderful story from Erica Shadowsong. And on music, well, we just heard from that incredible quintet for our prelude. That was Nozumi Yasuda, Ethan O., Sanjuna Kulkarni, Nicholas East Coast. I am mumbling today. East Coast and Eric Zhu, and I hope you appreciated them as much as we did. And of course, we also have our own beloved Amaury Morales. Hymn leader today is Iulita Kornberg, and on Tech Wizard team is Paul Cunningham and Emily Sweeney. On behalf of all of us, thank you for being with us this morning for our online worship service. And if this is your very first time with us, I invite you. Please, we would like to be in touch with you, and we hope you'd like to know more about us. So if you haven't already done so, check us out on our website. That's first-unitarian-pgh.org. And you can sign up for our weekly newsletter found at the bottom of the page. You can also join us for social time right after this worship service at around 11:30. To get the Zoom link for that, please send us an email. You'll get an auto response. Send the email to First Unitarian Pittsburgh, one word, firstunitarianpittsburgh@gmail.com. Now, I invite you to take a deep breath along with me. Allow yourself to arrive mentally, physically, and spiritually into the space and the time and preparation for community worship, and however that means for you. Take some deep breaths and let go of any need to be elsewhere. Let your thoughts stay focused on this moment, and your body, on your spirit, and your heart. Picture yourself connected to all others who are gathered in worship in community at this moment, as well as in the future, in time and space. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being the gathered community. We turn now to our chalice, the symbol of our faith, of Unitarian Universalism. Today, we invite the light of our chalice to remind us to explore all of our faiths, and today in particular, Christianity, and who is the character, the mythic, the teacher, the rabbi, the cosmic leader of Jesus Christ. During the time of Advent, let us explore the deeper questions of our Christian roots. And for Advent, we have so far lit a candle of patience and one to dispel the darkness. And this week we pledge to work for the most rare of things, peace on earth. In this holiday season, may we find peace inside ourselves. May we be peace for those around us. May we renew our commitment to bring peace with justice to our community and the world. May we be peace. The words of Reverend David Breeden. Let us now turn our hearts and our voices to singing as we welcome the Advent People Look East.
People look east and see today. morning. I'm Erica Shadowsong, Lifespan Director of Religious Education. And today, the story I'm going to tell comes from the Bible, comes from the New Testament. The most popular and numerous stories about Jesus were about his healing. That was one of the things he was known for the most. And there were many, many stories and legends about his healing powers. This story takes place in Jerusalem. There was a gathering of the Jews that was going to happen there, so Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, there was this outside pool of water, and it was near a pen of sheep. It was near the sheep gate. And around this pool were crowded all manner of people who were sick, who were ill, who had chronic illnesses or injuries. Some of them were blind, some of them couldn't hear, some of them couldn't even move any part of their bodies at all. Some of them couldn't walk. There was one man there who had been there for 38 years. The reason they gathered around this pool was because every once in a while the water would start moving. And they said that an angel of the Lord came and stirred up the water. And when the angel came and the water was moving, whoever got in there first would be healed of whatever their illness was. So they crowded around this and they would rush to the pool when the water started to move. But the man had been there for 38 years, had never gotten into the pool. When Jesus came to Jerusalem and he came through this crowd, he knew that that man had been sick for a very, very long time. And he said, "Why do you not go into the pool?" And the man, who had no idea who he was talking to, said, "Sir, I have no one who can put me in the pool. And every time I try to get there, there's always somebody there first." Jesus' answer to that was, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And the man immediately stood up, took up his bed, and began to walk. Now, the Jews heard about this, and this was kind of a problem because it was supposed to be the Sabbath. It was the day of rest, and you weren't supposed to do any work or any labor on that day. And this is not the first time and not the only time that Jesus did this. So many times, not only did he have a healing miracle, but it would often rub some of the Jewish people the wrong way because he would do it on the day that they were supposed to do no work. But I'm sure that didn't make a difference to that man. What's one of the most enduring stories about Jesus? Jesus the healer.
Our religious community is made up of volunteers and staff, creating and hosting a variety of programming, even as we stay safe during this time of pandemic. We rely on your financial support. Please take time to reflect on your ability to financially support this community. Donations by check may be mailed to the church office. Electronic donations can be made online through the church website or by texting GIVE to 412-435-1050 and following the instructions.
We have so many joys and sorrows that remain silent in the sanctuary of our hearts. And I hope you all know that you do not journey on your path alone. For all those pains and for all those celebrations that have happened in isolation, I hope you find ways to ground yourself in the preciousness of life and reach out to the beloved community that surrounds you. Please join me in a few moments of silent meditation. Spirit of love, fill our hearts that too often break with the grief in our own lives and the grief of injustice and oppression that we read of and hear of in the headlines every day. Spirit of life, fill us with the energy to keep going, even when we find ourselves exhausted, when we find grief too much to bear. Spirit of love and life, of community. Even in this time of the year when we may find ourselves surrounded by an insistence that we be happy and merry, we have to remember that so many go without, too many are dying, and too many are frightened and alone. We offer our prayers, our deepest prayers and thoughts for all those in our country who experienced such terrifying of the tornadoes yesterday throughout the Midwest. In 6 states, our people were terrified. Let us remember that there are ways to reach out and help ease the pain and grief and destruction. Spirit of love, spirit of life and justice and community, remind us that we have such depth of power in our beings, in our words, in our deeds, in all the ways that we can reach out into this world. And by this, we learn to live again, even when our grief is great. Remind us of how to sustain ourselves, how to build our resilience, how to create a world of love and depth and beauty and awe. That we have this capacity within ourselves and how we stay connected to the larger community, this religious community, this religious body of beloved family and friends and strangers yet to be welcomed in. Blessed be, and amen.
The Nativity by Christopher Harvey. Unfold thy face, unmask thy ray. Shine forth, bright sun, double the day. Let no malignant, misty fume, nor foggy vapor once presume to interpose thy perfect sight, this day which makes us love thy light forever better than we could that blessed object once behold, which is both the circumference and center of all excellence, or rather neither, but a treasure, unconfined without measure, whose center and circumference, including all preeminence, excluding nothing but defect, and infinite in each respect, is equally both here and there and now and then and everywhere, and always once one, himself the same, a being far above a name. Draw near then and freely pour forth all thy light into that hour, which was crowned with his birth and made heaven envy earth. Let not his birthday clouded be, by whom thou shinest, and we see.
What a lovely, lovely reading, and a hard reading to do, but Stephanie, you did it justice. Thank you. So I invite you to settle in for this one, folks. I'm feeling on a little bit of a rant here. For about 1,700 years, Unitarians, and yes, I mean Unitarians, not so much the Universalists, have been rejecting a lot of things about Jesus, and particularly Jesus Christ. I think it's worth asking every few hundred years or so, who is Jesus Christ? And we can start with that very question that Jesus asked. En route to Jerusalem, Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "Who do you say that I am?" Stories had been circulating, rumors, of course. This is a community like any other. Some were saying he was John the Baptist and had returned, or perhaps he was the prophet Elijah from the book of Judges in the Hebrew Scriptures. Lots of rumors. But then Jesus stopped and he looked at Simon Peter, one of his disciples, and he said, looking right at Simon Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." So here we are, during the holidays, the birth of Jesus' birth being celebrated imminently. It's relevant to ask because there are a lot of answers, what appears to be a simple question. Throughout the ages, what has been at issue, along with a few other theological construction zones, is the nature of Jesus. And it's a spectrum of options ranging from full humanity to one of divinity. From the human version, we find in the early Gospels, which were written around 60 to 90 Common Era, is Mark, Matthew, and Luke, what are known as the Synoptic Gospels because of their similarity of their stories and would likely shared the stories in their writing. Biblical scholars think that this collection is one to help bring in the narrative of a popular Jewish leader for future generations to remember who this man was. And then you have the last gospel, the book of John. It's usually dealt with separately because you meet a different version of Jesus, one that is more cosmic, mystical, the Alpha and the Omega image of Jesus. Very different from Mark, Matthew, and Luke. And some have even said it may be the one Gnostic book that made it into the final selection or the canon of the Christian scriptures. The Gnostics were a first century sect that emphasized a deep personal knowledge of the Christ figure. Now, historically, as Christianity is evolving, this nature, the figure of Jesus, was largely lost for Unitarians. They placed Jesus as a faith in the man, and we emphasize the early Gospels as the prophet, the rabbi, the healer, the teacher. But there's also the nature of Jesus that is guiding the theological debates into deeper questions. What degree Does Jesus carry the human or the cosmic natures? We can get into some hair-splitting conversations about that. When did they first appear? How have they influenced the new emerging Christian church? And how is this theological debate still relevant today in a splintering Christian church? As the early Christian church evolved, there came a pivotal moment for Unitarians. You've probably heard about the Council of Nicaea before. It was in 325 when the priests and the bishops gathered with Constantine and a great conference of theological debate about the nature of Jesus. And at the table was a priest named Arius, who believed that Jesus was the Son of God, but more human than fully divine. And there was Constantine. And after months of ad nauseum debate, I'm sure there was a lot of nap-taking going on, Constantine finally weighed down and said that Jesus was fully equal to God, the same substance as God. And that was it for those who were advocating for Arians or Arius as God being separate, that Jesus was human, more human, divine, but more human. If Arius hadn't lost that debate, I'm not sure the anti-Trinitarians, or what became Unitarians, would ever have evolved. That was the moment. That battle over the nature of Jesus, though, did not end simply because Constantine weighed in. It created the first two pivots of the Trinity. A few decades later, they added the Holy Ghost, creating the final threesome of the Trinity. And Arius, unfortunately, was not only defeated, he was then persecuted for being a heretic. The different competing versions of Jesus continued well into the 5th and 6th century. And we have another Council of Chalcedon in the 451, and that definition of Jesus and the Trinity stands today. But over these 200 years, there was massive conflict over Jesus. There were reports of violent horror stories of inter-Christian violence that was kind of like the Crusades and the Inquisition, but it was directed inward. For example, there were reports that the Eucharist was brutally forced upon competing nuns and priests in a violent conversion. This bloody split led to half of Christianity being lost through much of Asia and Africa, and allowed for the rise of Islam and eventually the fall of Rome. It created a significant political and geographical influences. And that pivotal question resulting in so much, who do you say that I am? Well, this also leads to the next question, which is so important about the nature of the church. Nature of Jesus and the nature of the church go hand in hand. Who Jesus is fundamental. Does the church emphasize Jesus' humanity? And this allows for a more personal connection through the body of this extraordinary leader. In this human version, it is inspiring of faith in challenging times. Someone that has seen and deeply felt and can relate to on a personal level, with a man who preached on a radical love that was unheard of in oppressive times. It was based on a powerful call for justice, radical egalitarian society. Now, keep in mind that Jesus preached about social shame rather than overt violence. For example, it's not about an eye for an eye. It's about turn the other cheek. He encouraged the breaking of laws, such as working on the Sabbath, as we heard in the story. He spoke to children, and he honored women. This is the Jesus that Unitarian Universalists have long admired and invited into our pews. Yet, human nature being what it is, we can diminish the powerful story easily. And that narrative of Jesus and God limits the story's enduring historical impact. And that faith into just the mere man can fall into a shallow and limited faith. And it also allows for what did happen, that there is a source of salvation, but the emphasis was on a shared pain of the crucifixion rather than a shared radical love. It was easily abused by the church throughout the centuries, leading to massive outbreaks of violence and the emphasis of that bloody crucifixion, that emphasis of shared pain, which, by the way, didn't really happen until the 9th century, when Charlemagne and the Saxons forced an adoption of conversion through the images of the crucifixion. There's no no known artwork before the 9th century of the crucifixion. It was Charlemagne. Well, the church could also emphasize the Christ figure, the mysterious, the metaphorical, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. It's about the transcendent and the immanent. It's a source of salvation through a universal, egalitarian love rather than pain of a crucifixion. Does the church bring Jesus' divinity as a divine source of authority to develop and to build a community, emphasizing the strength and its enduring nature of all of humanity's best values through powerful, transcendent experiences of the holy and the sacred? And through a more cosmic lens, constant reminder that we are more than who we claim to be, more than our limited brains and the vision of who we can be, an aspiration of who we can be. But alas, this cosmic version has been abused as well. Source of absolute authority, used in oppressive and unquestionable power over dynamics when there's been no allowance for inquiry or debate. This is done when the divine right of God is equated with the divine right of the Pope and the King. Boundaries are drawn tight and narrow with no room for questioning. The split in Christianity over the nature of Jesus hasn't ended. It continues in some forms today into the 20th and 21st century. Not as bloody, but still very political, progressives versus fundamentalists, and we're seeing that influence on our political spectrum as well. And in this more contemporary split, we hear Christians asking fellow Christians if they are saved. That is, are they born again, and therefore are they the right kind of Christian? It's a purity test, not unlike the forced communion way back in the 5th and 6th centuries. And unfortunately, the fundamentalists have most of the media attention because they garner the attention with hateful, oppressive acts and words. Who wants to lead the headlines with universal love and salvation? But left out of all the headlines and the grabbing moments and out of this deep conflict are the Unitarians. And here we are, still focusing on the human side of Jesus by way of our Protestant lineage, our cousins from the United Church of Christ. But then a game-changing moment happened for the Unitarians. When we merged with the Universalists in 1961, Unitarians tentatively began to explore a deeper and more sustaining faith based on a powerful form of universal salvation through inclusive love, the mystical, the Alpha Omega expansiveness. Universalists brought an argument for the Christ side of Jesus' nature. And for many, they believed that it created a stronger and more expansive, inclusive church for Unitarian Universalists to come together. We can see some of the influence of the Universalist mystical side in one of our hymns, number 27, and a reading, 493, that were authored by Hildegard of Bingen, who was a 12th century Catholic mystic who emphasized the cosmic nature of Jesus. While Unitarian Universalists are being left out of today's contemporary Christian split, and that's okay, we have an opportunity to invite in, to welcome those who are yearning for something different. They truly, for example, to integrate faith and science together, to welcome human failures with a universal love, to acknowledge reason needs some mystery, they're compelling partners, to see the challenge of forgiveness with a non-violent atonement. There's no need for a sacrifice on the cross. And a call for an imminent presence of love and the transcendent reach to the cosmos. We have some powerful teachers who can help guide us as we start to grasp and deepen our understanding of the Jesus Christ figure. Father Richard Rohr, an American Franciscan priest, he writes that the Christ meaning has not thoroughly been unpacked for Christians. He poses that a conflict with science and cosmology and faith, they need to be merged. The story of Jesus with science, this is such an important moment that brings in a call for a new theology. And this would help counter that angry, violent human nature that so often infiltrates our faith systems. Within Christianity, the discussion of the nature of Jesus continues as what Richard Rohr calls what the Christ means in the confluence of divinity and physicality, spirit and matter. When the material and spiritual worlds coexist, he says that is the moment we have Christ. As he writes, our new awareness of the cosmos, the vastness and the unimaginably ancient history is forcing us to rehear these scripture texts. Through the word of Christ means the anointed one. That anointment by God includes all of us and all of creation. We bring the plants and the animals and all of nature in with us. They are windows into the endless creativity, the fruitfulness and joy of God. Rohr continues, incarnation is already about redemption. Bethlehem was more important than Calvary. Bethlehem was more important than Calvary. And he writes, it is good to be human. The earth is good. Rohr is trying to counterbalance all the deep parts of ourselves where we tend toward anger and violence and betrayal. Rohr continues that historically we've been turned Christianity into the evacuation plan for the next world. The term cosmic Christ, he writes, reminds us that everything and everyone belongs. We are all unworthy, but the mystery of the incarnation means the divine indwelling is in all of us. End quote. My friends, we need, as Unitarian Universalists, to listen to what Rohr and many other theologians are saying. I believe they translate into a strong and powerful call for our perspective to recognize this is a theological bridge that connects to our first and seventh principles, but the inherent worth and dignity and the interdependent web of all existence. Rohr describes the Christ figure that we heard in Christopher Harvey's beautiful 17th century poem that we heard from Stephanie earlier. It's a time when it was written at a time of the pre-Enlightenment when reason became the path to understanding God. In Harvey's stunning reflection of the Nativity, he cries out for the transcendent and life, to see light in the universe, never ending, always existing, the road of hope and a visionary way of existence. I'm not advocating for the Trinity. That's not what I'm saying. But in this 21st century world of religious pluralism, I am advocating for Unitarian Universalists to explore our Christian roots with a deeper, broader understanding for what offers us to expand and grow and mature our Unitarian Universalist faith, rather than rejecting based on ancient historical misunderstanding and, frankly, bad theology. Our Christ-like roots can be seen in our principles, particularly the first and the seventh, the inherent worth and dignity because we are all part of creation, and the celebration of the interdependent web of creation. We, Unitarian Universalists, like Christians, we're at a pivotal point in history right now. We are at a pivotal point in religious history. The attendance numbers for churches are plummeting and have been for the last 20 years. We are at a threat of extinction. We need for a reinterpretation, a new theology that emphasizes collective liberation based on an interconnected web. Collective liberation for the interconnected web. And I hear that call within the new dynamics of a Christian image, based on the Christ cosmos as well as the human Jesus. For Unitarian Universalists to expand our own sense of the sacred, we sometimes need to suspend our need for reason-based evidence, allowing for mystery and surprise. Not sacrificing reason, no, but we allow for passion and the capacity to connect with the cosmos through an emotive response, through awe. We hear that and we feel it in music, art, dance, and nature, meditation, and prayer. So it's a call to let ourselves like rivers headed to the ocean of collective universal love. We do not have to figure this out alone. We have Christian siblings who are ready to help us. One of my favorite authors, Kathleen Norris, tells about a time when her faith hit a low point. She was the author of Amazing Grace, and in this low point, she found that her faith lacked depth. It lacked a center. And she was feeling, troubled, and she was actually feeling guilty, like somehow she wasn't a good enough Christian. But she confessed to a monk one day. And the monk said, most of us feel that way one time or another. Jesus is the hardest part of the religion to grasp, to keep alive. So Nora spent some time at a women's monastery, as she frequently did. And one day she was invited to participate in the statio. That's the community's procession into the church. It literally means standing, or in Latin, it's an active verb, not static. The true act of hospitality to be invited in as a layperson into the statio. And she accepted. And she realized you can't just amble in to the sanctuary and sit in the pew that's open without a thought about arrival. It's a preparation. They line up 2 by 2. And they bow to the Christ that is in front of them in the altar. And then they turn and bow to their partner, recognizing and affirming the Christ in the other. A moment of preparation. For Norris, this act shifted her faith and brought it alive again. Jesus was not just a grand social worker or healer or teacher or beloved guru. She saw Jesus as human and Christ. She saw the paradox of both natures, not a simplistic, dualistic thinking, but a creative tension. And this is a challenge for our human brains. We prefer binary, dualistic thinking. We don't like paradox. It's a leap of faith. So what if we as Unitarian Universalists found a way, as we enter into the worship space, to acknowledge the interdependent web of all existence, and to acknowledge the inherent worth and dignity of our fellow parishioners, of those we enter into worship with. For this act, this merger, it brings together for me the concreteness of my faith in humanity, and as well as my existence in the more cosmic connections in which I also live. So I offer an invitation to a practice for you. Maybe just start over the holidays, and if it works, continue on. I invite you to look up into the cosmos, Recognize with gratitude and awe, affirmation and celebration of the interdependent web. I invite you to look down and remember to stay grounded in creation itself with every step. And finally, to look to your side to see the love of community. My charge for you this week, my friends, as our Christian siblings celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, I invite you, whether you are Christian or Jewish, humanist, pagan, or a seeker, ask, who was Jesus Christ for you in the past? Who is Jesus Christ for you today? And how has your view changed? And where might it go? Amen and blessed be. Whether it's in your heart or in your home, as we extinguish this one, with words that are spoken by Unitarian Universalists all across the country on Sunday mornings. Or perhaps they're in your heart, they're in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go forth, my friends, go forth into this world with your heart and your mind opened a little bit as we celebrate the birth of a baby, so warm and cuddly and easy to embrace. Maybe we need to expand and see where that story goes. How does it still have meaning for us today and into the future? Return again with love. Blessed be.